Hello and welcome to Antrica. This is a recording of how we set up the Spotbox4K with both a on-viv camera and an RTSP camera. In the top left hand corner you can see a video image of the Spotbox screen. Currently you can see 4 no camera images, so this is a quad view. No cameras have been set up, and when you first boot the box up, what will happen is you will see the IP address of the camera at the bottom of the screen in red. So I'm going to simulate that using my remote control by pressing the menu button. That allows me to check the IP address at any time I wish. So here you can see it's 0.222. So what I'm going to do now is open up a web page, and we're going to browse into that box using that IP address. So we're going to use the 0.222 IP address. So this is the default IP for the Spotbox. Let me just get rid of that web page behind. So the first thing you'll see is the login page, and admin are the credentials. You type that in and that takes you to the setup page. Now here you have a number of tabs along the top. I'll go through these very briefly. So the home page shows you what's already been set up. So you're in a grid 2x2 mode. You can actually change that. You can go 3x3. Sorry, this is the default. So default grid mode means whatever this is set to, when you click apply, the next time the box is rebooted, this is the mode in which the box will boot back into. We're currently in 2x2. If you want to change that mode, just for now, we can switch to 3x3, and you can see that in the top left hand corner, 4x4, and we can't go full screen because we don't have a camera loaded in yet, but if you had a single camera you could do that. So let's go back to 2x2. The next section is cameras. This is where we set up what we want to do with each of the cameras. So the camera URL would be here in this box. The label will be the name that you give it, and then along here are a number of options. So one of the things, I won't go into these too much because these are all in the user manual, but the main things that you'll be interested in are the grid modes. So if you want to put a camera in 2x2, you would select the position you want that camera to appear, and that's where it will appear in 2x2. The position at the end here defines the position of the text. So the label that you've set here, so let's say we call that Hikvision. If you want that label to be in the top left, you'd select position 1, and top right position 2, and so on. The discovery section is really the most important part. We'll go into that in a moment. Display, this is basically the font size that you wish to display in all the different grid modes. You can select between small, medium or large. So this just defines the font size that's going to be used for the label. So remember, in the previous section we called it Hikvision. And the display mode, currently I'm in 1920 by 1080 60 frames a second because my monitor is a 1080p monitor. If you had a 4K monitor connected, this would show some other resolutions, including 3840 by 2160. That's definitely the best way to go because you get the full 4K experience then. In network, we can change the network settings, DHCP, static, and so on. System gives us a few options here. We can change the password for the admin user. You can't change the username, it's always admin, but you can change the password. You can basically update the firmware using this section here, and then you would load a firmware file and then click load update, and it's as simple as that. System config is all the cameras that you load. If you wish to copy that configuration into another Spotbox, you can actually save a config file and load that onto another Spotbox, or indeed save it in case you want to reload it at some future date. And then you have two other options here, reboot and factory reset, which are fairly self-explanatory. And then finally at the bottom you've got the Spotbox 109 firmware version with a date. And this is the firmware we're currently running, which is the latest firmware 109. So let's go back to Discover, and now we're going to discover some network cameras. So the first thing we do is go to the search button and click that. Now this is going to go and look for all the OnViv cameras on our network. And here you can see we found a number of OnViv cameras. I'm going to focus on 0.182, which is a Hikvision camera. And here is the Hikvision camera in this notepad. Username is admin, password A1B2, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and type in admin and then password A1B2C3D4. And now I'm going to click add. Now what happens is that camera now appears at the bottom with its OnViv URL in its username and password. Now the next step, we have to query that camera. A lot of customers miss this step. You have to query it to find out what profiles have been set up within the OnViv camera. So we click query, and after a few seconds the camera will come back and tell the Spotbox, let me just make that screen a little bit longer. It comes back with two profiles. It's called mainstream and substream. Obviously if you've got more profiles then there'll be a longer list. It tells you the resolution, frame rate, and all of those are good to go in certain views within the Spotbox. So we now have to save this, and as soon as we've saved it, the save button will change back to query. If you want to check whether it's been saved, you go to the camera section, and here is our OnViv camera, and it appears, at the moment it's not appearing anywhere. So I'm going to give it assign a quadrant in the 2x2 view, and as soon as I click apply, if you keep an eye on the left hand corner of this screen, you'll see it will actually pop up on the actual screen, and there you go. It's a live view of our tech support office at the Antrica office. So that's really all there is to it in terms of setting up an OnViv camera and putting it into a particular grid mode. The next thing we're going to do is put an RTSP URL. Now, if it's authenticated RTSP, you could enter it here manually, but you would have to put the URL, the authentication within the URL. Well, one thing I forgot to tell you is how to put a label, so let's give that a label called Hikvision and apply that. And now you can see in the top left hand corner over here the Hikvision appears in the top left hand corner. It's difficult to see because it's in green on a white background. Right, so RTSP URL, we could add that in here, or we could go back to the Discover section and we can add it manually in here. So on my notepad here, I'm just going to copy that URL, paste it in there. Now this particular URL has already got root 1234 within it, so I'm going to just delete that just to show you how to enter it in here. And then we would put root and 1234, and we click add. Now that's added it at the bottom, that hasn't saved it yet because we have one more opportunity to check it, and this time we click save. Now when we go to the camera section, you'll find that that now appears as an RTSP URL, but note that the username and password is not shown here anymore because obviously it's hidden within the box. This is a security feature. So if we now type in Axis RTSP, just to remind us that that's what we're going to do, we're now going to put that in position 2 on the grid 2x2 mode and click apply. And there you go. So there's your Axis camera using an authenticated RTSP URL. Now I want to show you one more thing. When we do Discover, and let's try and add this one back in. Let's just do admin A1, B2, C3, D. Now I'm going to put D5. So I've deliberately made an error in the username and password. I'm going to add that in. It still pops up at the bottom and it's still got this wrong username, or I could actually change the password and add some extra letters on there just to show you that. I'm now going to query that and just show you what happens. Now nothing happens, it stays there and the query button remains query. This means that it hasn't actually saved it. But if you go to the camera section, you'll see that it's trying to put it in position 3, but it's in red. Now that tells you that there's something wrong and it's not going to work. So there's no point proceeding any further. You may as well delete that and apply, because anything in red in this section is not going to work. So that's basically how you discover a camera and how you add an RTSP URL. So as I said, one last place you could add you can copy that, add that in here, paste. Now you've pasted it with, I'm just going to call this axis 2. You've actually pasted it with its root 1, 2, 3, 4 within the URL, which is one way of doing it, and I'm going to put that in position 3 here and click apply. So I basically duplicated the camera, but just to show you that you can actually add an RTSP URL in here. Now the last thing to say is that when you discover cameras with OnViv, it saves all of the profiles that you've asked it to save. So for example, in 2x2 mode it's going to use this profile, but if you then move to 3x3, the box can't display 1920 by 1080 in 9 locations because the resolution's too high. So it will revert to the lower resolution and display that in 3x3, and in fact it will display that in 4x4 mode as well. So if we now go home, we can actually change the view. We can go to full screen view and actually show you that camera full screen. We can go to an RTSP camera and show you that camera full screen. Or we can go 3x3. We haven't actually shown any cameras in 3x3 and 4x4. Sorry, the box is trying to catch up with me. I'm going a bit fast for it. So there you go. So we're back to 2x2 with 3 cameras being displayed. So that's it. That's the simple way that you can set up an OnViv camera and an RTSP camera. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoy using the Spotbox.